away to my Father, but I will return.
Now, the history of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan solidifies the fact that he specifically traveled abroad to thwart several wars that were hatched by the United States government against other nations. His quests were based on the instructions that he received from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought him to the Great Mother Plain on September 17th, 1985. In that meeting between them, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad revealed to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan the aim of the President of the United States, then Ronald Reagan, in planning a war. Now, let's revisit some of these words from the Honorable Louis Farrakhan himself in describing his experience on the Great Mother Wheel or Plain in that meeting with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He states, he, meaning the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, spoke in short, cryptic sentences, and as he spoke, a scroll full of cursive writing rolled down in front of my eyes. But it was a projection of what was being written in my mind. As I attempted to read the cursive writing, which was in English, the scroll disappeared and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad began to speak to me. He said, quote, President Reagan has met with the Joint Chiefs of Staff to plan a war. I want you to hold a press conference in Washington, D.C. and announce their plan and say to the world that you got the information from me, Elijah Muhammad, on the wheel. Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did not tell the Honorable Louis Farrakhan the details of their plans, which included who made or who was the target of this war that was being planned. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan often, on many occasions, said that he had to figure that out. So in pursuit of his assignment from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan eventually held a press conference in 1989 detailing his vision-like experience on the wheel in September of 1985, although Ronald Reagan was no longer the U.S. president. In his press conference, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan explained how he eventually determined in early 1986 that the war that the U.S. president was planning was against Libya and Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan set out to interfere with this war by visiting Libya and Colonel Gaddafi and informing them about his experience on the wheel and advising them about the imminent military assault against them by the U.S. government. Now, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan was already traveling, so he interrupted his travel to go there. He didn't leave from the United States during that time to speak with Muammar Gaddafi or alert them to what he had experienced. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan said at that time that he was not thinking about holding an actual press conference to announce the U.S. government's plans to wage war against Libya. So he did not hold one as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad instructed him to do. Now, at that time, he said this in his press conference, not when he went to visit Libya. It was afterwards that he realized that he had to hold an actual press conference. Now, in the Holy Quran, it states of the Messiah to say, "Say, I know not whether the punishment which ye are promised is near, or whether my Lord will appoint for it a distant term. He alone knows the unseen, nor does he make anyone acquainted with his mysteries except a messenger whom he has chosen. Then he makes a band of watchers In some translations, it used a band of angels or just simply angels. March before him and behind him, that he may know that they have truly brought and delivered the messages of their Lord. And he surrounds all the mysteries that are with them and takes account of every single thing. So since Allah ensures that his messenger delivers his message, then the war against Libya was not the war that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was referring to. Obviously, since he didn't deliver that and alert the people about this war by having a press conference before it took place. However, during the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's historic 1989 press conference, known as the announcement, he pointed to an article that was published in 1987 in the Atlanta Constitution Journal. This article verified the truth of his vision-like experience on the Great Mother Wheel in 1985 because the article described how President Reagan secretly planned a war against Libya during the summer of 1985. And secretly means that Congress wasn't involved, like they're not today. However, in that 1989 press conference, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan announced that then President George H. Bush, meaning for Herbert, had met with his Joint Chiefs of Staff under the direction of General Colin Powell to plan a war against black people in America, the Nation of Islam in himself, meaning the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, with particular emphasis on the destruction of black youth. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan explained in that press conference how this war was being hatched under the guise of a war against drug sellers, drug users, gangs, and violence. Of course, all black. Black drug sellers, black drug users, black gangs, and black violence, which had been raised to a national security topic in the satanic mass news media. Now, during the time of his 1989 press conference, the crack epidemic in most inner cities among black and brown people was heavily underway, destroying families, neighborhoods, and whole communities. Now today, most people know, which they didn't know then when the crack epidemic hit, but today we know that the US government was behind this epidemic. A series of articles in an expose by reporter Gary Webb, published in the San Jose Mercury News, detailed a drug triangle during the 1980s that linked CIA officials operating in Central America with a San Francisco drug ring and a Los Angeles drug dealer. According to the series of articles by Gary Webb, the CIA and its operatives used crack cocaine sold to and through the Los Angeles black community to raise millions of dollars to support the CIA's covert operations in Central America. Now, in the history of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, he spoke against that and even went into more details than what I'm going into right now. And even though the mass news media's connection with the CIA fiercely discredited Gary Webb, who eventually said committed suicide, he was exonerated of the lies and slander they heaped on him. Again, even though he didn't live to see it. They went all out after this man. But later on, articles started to come out into the public with similar research that exonerated him. So not only did this wicked treachery by the U.S. government destroy the lives of millions of black, brown, and white people in the U.S., but it also circumvented the war powers of the U.S. Congress, enabling military operations to take place in foreign lands without the announcement of an official declaration of war afforded the U.S. Congress. So what do we have? We have people who can do just about anything they want with your sons and daughters in the military. No checks, no balances. Just complete madness. Now, the drug epidemic, the crack cocaine drug epidemic, and the violence that ensued from it, arising from it, particularly in black communities, as some people wanted to make money by getting their brothers and sisters hooked on drugs so they can ride with spinning rims and bling bling. And as a consequence, blood was all in the streets of some of these communities, some of our communities, by drug wars. We are the children of Israel, dumb and ignorant. But at the same time, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan was teaching, again, beginning in actually 77, but before the crack cocaine hit. But we always got a reason to do evil. I got to get mine. Somebody gonna sell it to them. Well, this crack cocaine epidemic gave the synagogue of Satan under former president, now William Clinton, and U.S. Senator Joseph Biden, the lead way to construct and enact the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. This act or law captured millions of black men, hundreds of thousands of black men, whether guilty of a minor drug offense or not at all. And it ignited the prison industrial complex throughout the United States, packing the coffers of the Wall Street financial titans who put the prison industry on the stock market. And all we can say later on is that we want these bills repealed, which they keep delaying and delaying and delaying. You live and I live among monsters who govern us. In every generation, they just wait for that generation to drop dead. Then a new generation comes up in there, you filled with folly and stupidness for the most part, till they get the point years later. Now they want to join a protest and they just wait for them to die the hell off too. So it just keeps going. Well, it's coming to an end now, but I'm showing you the track record, the cycle. Now, although there's much more that we can say about the United States government's assault on black and brown people in America and in the West Indies, this is enough to affirm the truth of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's announcement given to him on the Great Mother announcement given in 1989, his press conference, based on what he received from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on the wheel in 1985, and that is that the U.S. government was planning a war against the black people of America, the Nation of Islam, and himself. So the war plan devised and implemented during the Reagan administration extended through the presidential administrations of succeeding presidents up to this very one today, Joseph Biden. Now, when we examine the work of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan since 1981, and specifically since 1985. He has exposed and opposed the U.S. government's warmongering efforts. Again, he opposed the war against Libya by Ronald Reagan in 1986. He opposed the war in Iraq by George H. Bush, president at that time, and he opposed the war on terror by the son of George H. Bush, George W. Bush, in 2001, issuing divine warning and guidance to those presidents who implemented these destructive wars. Now, can we surmise in retrospect that during their meeting in 1985, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad charged the Honorable Louis Farrakhan with the task of interfering with all of the U.S. president's efforts to make war on the nations of the earth? Even though the Honorable Elijah Muhammad mentioned a war, singular. Well, we could presume this, but it's more sensible to call the quest of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan to fulfill his assignment or this directive, a journey towards achieving that ultimate goal. Now, I want to ask a question to all of you, because maybe we have not properly assessed why the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is vilified by the satanic mass news media. So is the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's consistent interference with the wicked plans of the international warmongers the reason why he is publicly vilified, called anti-this and anti-that? Well, think on that question. Well, it's natural to presume that the war that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that President Reagan was planning was against a particular nation, even though the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did not say that specifically to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Again, during their meeting on the Great Mother Plain on September 17, 1985. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad identified no nation as the target of this war. He simply said a war was being planned by President Reagan and his Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, what war? Or what, better question is, what is the culmination of this war? And if it is a culmination, does it extend, this war plan extend to what we are seeing right now today? Well, where are you going with this, Brother Karriem? In the Supreme Wisdom lessons given by Master Fard Muhammad to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have a lesson called Lost Found Muslim Lesson Number 2. But it is also called First Term Examination Assignment of Mr. Elijah Muhammad. Now, this lesson opens with the following statement. And this lesson contains questions asked by Master Fard Muhammad and answered by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The questions were posed and they were answered. Then when this was packaged, there was an introductory note at the beginning of the lesson. And this note says from Master Fard Muhammad, this lesson is answered very near correct, and all students should read and study it until he or she can recite it by heart. Now, very near correct does not mean incorrect. He didn't say that. It does not mean it's wrong. He didn't say that either. And why would he tell us to read, study, and recite it if it was incorrect and wrong? It means that the answer is close to completion and that there's a little more ways to go. Very near correct. That's correct. A goal. Nearer, 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 very near. Correct. It's a journey towards the completion of an assignment. So the Messiah's work is not an examination on paper. His examination or lesson is his journey in the fulfillment of the Messianic prophecies. So it would be 40 years from this lesson, which was given in 1934, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would complete his examination. So the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's fulfillment of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's instructions given on the Great Mother Plain was and is a journey. And as we know, 1989 was 32 years ago, so it is conceivable that the war that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad instructed the Honorable Louis Farrakhan to make known, at least this aspect of it, is currently in its final stages of implementation. This war is the prophesied global war of desolation, which is absolutely attached to the Messiah's departure from among the people according to the Messianic prophecies. Now let us revisit this prophecy, since an increasing number of people believe that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is the Messiah. They're starting to speak about him in those terms. Well, it states in the book of Daniel, where the Messiah's name is mentioned, it states, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. And 62 weeks. The street shall be built again in the wall, and even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city in the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations shall he make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now, of course, for those who believe that Jesus was the Messiah, or Jesus of 2,000 years ago was the Messiah, you don't have to be concerned with this prophecy, because you wouldn't know what it means anyway. But again, the Messiah appears at the end of this world of Satan, and that was not obviously 2,000 years ago. Well, these events spoken of in Daniel prophesied align with Jesus' prophecy regarding the end of times that we read previously. Again, since the Messiah comes at the end of the world of Satan, and he comes to end Satan's world. Now let us connect the crucifixion of Jesus to the prophecy of Daniel. Because in this Bible, the Old Testament prophecies are of the Messiah. And those who wrote the gospel attempted to make it appear as though Jesus of 2,000 years ago was the Messiah who fulfilled the Old Testament prophecies. But they made big mistakes because they included Jesus's prophecies of the end of time. So he could not have been talking about himself when he prophesied of later days. Well, it states in the Gospel of Luke, comparing the two, the prophecy in Daniel with Jesus's prophecy that we read earlier. It states, "And he, Pontius Pilate, released unto them him that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired." Meaning they had a choice to make. They didn't choose Jesus. They chose Barabbas, is his name given elsewhere. Continue, "But he delivered Jesus to their will. And as they led him away, they laid hold upon one Simon, the Cyrenian, coming out of the country, and on him they laid the cross, that he might bear it after Jesus. And there followed him a great company of people, and of women, which also bewailed and lamented him," meaning Jesus. "But Jesus, turning unto them, said," and according to the scriptures, this is all he said on the way to Calvary, "Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming in which they shall say, Blessed are the barren women, and the wombs that never bear, and the paps which never gave suck." Now, clearly, most of those who preach about Jesus' crucifixion fail to mention his words to the daughters of Jerusalem. Notice Jesus did not say mothers. He said daughters because he was referring to future events, and that these daughters would become mothers. This may allude to perhaps a protracted war. Now, in Jesus's lament to the daughters of Jerusalem, warning and alert, you can call it, is there any greater pain than what a mother experiences when she is told that her child has died or was killed? Now, I'm not a mother. I will have pain as a father, which I am. But I would argue that there's no greater pain than what a mother who carried her children or that child experiences when somebody tells her that child was killed or died. So Jesus is saying that those who will not have children of age to fight on foreign soil will be spared the pain of loss of their sons resulting from this great war of desolation. Now, some of you may say, well, that's your interpretation. That's the Messianic Prophecies. You are more than welcome to present yours, but I know you don't have one. I saw some comments made on some of my lectures by so-called, I believe it's Muslims, they have Arabic names, that my interpretation of the Holy Quran is so off base. That's just one statement in a period. Well, how would I know since you didn't present yours? You don't have one. So mine can't be off base if you ain't presenting yours. You don't have one. You wouldn't know the Quran if I buried you in 1,000,000 of them. Just because you Arabic don't mean all of a sudden you should know something. Obviously not. Look at the Arab world. And by the way, why are you here in the country when this government's bombing yours? Just a group of goddamn hypocrites. So when we consider this prophecy that we just read concerning Jesus's walk to Calvary to be crucified, against the prophecy given in Daniel of the Messiah's cutoff. We can connect the events related to the Messiah's cutoff, meaning that he's cut off. Then there's some destruction that takes place in the sanctuary in the city, followed by a flood, and then the War of Desolation. Well, today we don't have to consider the math regarding the prophecy of the Messiah's cutoff, the 62 weeks, because the Honorable Louis Farrakhan recently affirmed his own cutoff. Therefore, our expectation should be the U.S. government's seizure of the assets of the Nation of Islam, the incoming flood of propaganda against the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, followed by the escalation of the global war of desolation. Now, this global war of desolation, or as it's called Armageddon, according to the prophecies, is expected to destroy millions, if not billions of lives. That's the objective of the synagogue of Satan. And this may be done, or in their mind, they may even have planned to use nuclear weaponry. Now, some of you may say, Karriem, that's unlikely. Why would nations want to launch nuclear weapons? You don't know the mind of Satan. Well, let us consider the most recent events to answer this question, since you think it's unlikely. Well, first, since the inauguration of President Biden, the U.S. have flown nuclear-capable B-52 bombers over the Middle East, near Iran, on 2 occasions, as a so-called show of strength against Iran. The first occurred a week after President Biden took office. Shows he wasn't interested in returning to the nuclear deal anyway. These USA B-52 bombers were accompanied by jets from Saudi Arabia, which is supposed to be a Muslim nation, just as Iran is. But Saudi Arabia has jets that's flying next to the B-52 bombers capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Answer that for me, Mr. Muslim from the East. Why is that happening? Is it gross deviation from Prophet Muhammad? You can't even call it deviation. You got to even question the belief in him from the outset. The other threat of the B-52 bombers occurred several days ago, March 7th. And these bombers were accompanied by military aircraft from Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. So if there is no Messiah, that area in the Middle East has no hope. Because it seems to me all of it's going up in smoke if this war of desolation takes place. Now, about 2 weeks ago, about a dozen U.S. congresspersons sent President Biden a letter asking him to relinquish sole authority to launch nuclear missiles. Oh, you mean he has sole authority to launch nuclear missiles? Yes, indeed. And this is consistent with the powers of a dictator. These Congress people presented President Biden in that letter with several recommendations for modifying existing laws, specifically those authorized on the heels of 9/11 terrorist attack under George W. Bush. These modifications would bring Congress or congressional authority back into the balance of the war powers of the United States. Furthermore, just last week, a group of senators now introduced a bill, which they hope will become law, that if passed would strip the office of the U.S. president from having unchecked power to do whatever he pleases with the U.S. military. So many in Congress are becoming more aware of the Great War, which is on the horizon, and they want to be able to have some say in it. Now, to this day, the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Office of the President has not agreed on what it is that precisely constitutes the need for an official declaration of war. I read the other day when President Biden launched those strikes in Syria, where some of the Congress people were very upset because they felt, particularly the new ones, that Congress should make an official declaration of war. Well, what constitutes a declaration of war? That's the prevailing problem for the U.S. Congress. So for those who call President Trump a dictator, if you remember, we reminded you last year that the laws enacted through Congress, particularly on the heels of 9/11, gave the U.S. president seemingly unfettered power over the U.S. armed forces. These laws really dismiss the authority of the U.S. Congress to effectively participate in or intervene in how the U.S. president uses the armed forces of the United States on both foreign and domestic soils. So while some of you were bashing Trump as wanting to be king and a dictator, I said some things about his attitude as well, in his actions as a demon, like the other presidents before him. But I also said the problem lied with the laws that enabled President George W. Bush and those who followed him to become near dictators over the American people. Now, of course, the war hawks within and backing the Biden administration will fight against this bill. They're going to fight so that it won't gain traction. But again, last year, we advised the American people to require a national referendum to repeal these unconstitutional laws, since it is the sons and daughters of the common people who are being used to fight wars to acquire the oil, drugs, and resources of nations for a few satanic families that own the U.S. presidency and the U.S. Congress. And perhaps the congressmen who are using that or trying to get a balance of power, go to your constituency and vie for that kind of referendum. I don't know if a referendum like that is possible, but it should be. Certain decisions should be put in the hands of the American people. In the declarations of war and war powers, they must have a say, since you're going to be collecting their sons and daughters to be the ones in a ground war that will annihilate most of them. Now, I'm telling you, it ain't no guess. You will be annihilated in a ground war because the United States is in the wrong and Allah is not with the aggressor. That's why I told you or asked you or encouraging you to get this book, the Holy Quran. So you'll know how Allah stands his position on matters like this. And since you don't have no power to determine the outcome, since he has, then you and I want to know what he says the outcome will be. So we can say, oh, hell no. You're not leading my sons and daughters into an inferno. You blind demonic beast. Now, President Biden, through his congressional record of voting, has long proved that he is no friend of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. That's my opinion based on what I know. I'm sure he might remember that much if he can't remember much else. Moreover, the vicious war hawks in President Biden's administration are not friends of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. They are his virulent enemies, the satanic think tanks that back each president administration. Therefore, it is guaranteed that there will be little hesitation on their part to arrest the Honorable Louis Farrakhan on false charges, which is the only way they can arrest him. They got to make it up with false witnesses to boot, or based on false witnesses, false testimonies. So their plans are in the works as we speak. Why? Well, again, it's absolutely clear that the U.S. government is poised to ignite the great global war of desolation. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan's voice is one that millions of people have heard and will continue to hear, to consider, and to heed. And this has been recently demonstrated through his explanation of the COVID-19 crisis that he gave last July, which included his warning to the people about the dangerous COVID-19 vaccines and his directives for the people, his people particularly, but every people, not to take them. No doubt the synagogue of Satan knows that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's voice against this upcoming global war of desolation will bring the U.S. government into complete disfavor by black, brown, and even white people, despite the extremely deceptive actions of the Biden administration to gain our favor by putting black and brown people in key positions in his cabinet. For example, Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now meeting with international leaders, and Secretary of Defense, General Lloyd Austin III. Black people. So you think because you're black and you can come before the people with some garbage that we should back a war for warmongers? So if this upcoming war is that great war of desolation, which it appears to be according to the fulfillment of the Messianic Prophecies, then it is this war that epitomizes the war that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was referring to in his meeting with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan on the Great Mother Plain in 1985. It seems reasonable that President Biden or a representative from his administration will be compelled by Congress to give cause for a declaration of war if a heavy ground U.S. military intrusion into Iran is part of the strategy. Let's hope that happens. Meaning that let's hope that there's a press conference with the U.S. president or a representative trying to give cause why we should invade Iran. I believe Congress needs to make that happen. Don't let up off those warmongers. Don't let up off them. Keep the pressure on them. Well, this means that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is destined to hold an international press conference in Washington, D.C., opposing this great war of desolation in fulfillment of his directive by the Honorable or from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I hope you're listening. Now, do you think that the synagogue of Satan wants the Honorable Louis Farrakhan to hold this press conference announcing their plans and disfavoring and criticizing and condemning their plans to go to war against Iran and consequently against China and Russia? Of course they don't. So the synagogue of Satan must stop the Honorable Louis Farrakhan from pursuing that press conference. Now they have two options on the table, as I see it, from Allah, but I will only discuss one of them. They must undermine the reverence and trust that black people and brown people in particular have for and in the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And this is traditionally how they do it. When they want to condemn somebody in the public, they bring up that person's private or domestic life. Because there's no greater emotion and greater drama than somebody spilling out into the media words or thoughts or lies about what's happening in your home. Well, if Allah permits this, we expect the satanic leaders to arrest the Honorable Louis Farrakhan again on false charges related to his domestic life. The mass news media will then slander him in such a ferocious way that it will make what they did to Donald Trump look like child's play. I was with Brother Jabril one day in the 1990s in Phoenix. Some of you know who he is, but that's not the point, even if you do. But because of who he is, it's a great point to know who he is. He said to me, brother, one day you'll be standing in this line in the grocery store and you will see the minister's picture and articles about him on the tabloids. Well, the synagogue of Satan has already measured the people's appetite for scandal and gossip. The satanic mass news media will attack the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's private life without let-up until the people yell for his crucifixion. I didn't know he was like this. I didn't know he was like that. We're just a fickle people. This book says a double-minded man is unsteady in all his ways. And I'm saying that kind of thinking epitomizes black people of America. I know it's not our fault, but we suffer. It's like beating yourself up because of that mentality. In one sense, you're against a system that's proven to be against you. But then on the other hand, you jump on your own leaders because of what the same system says that you hate about them. But we're God's chosen people. He's going to work with us to come out of that kind of demented thinking. And he's doing it. Now, again, these things are written in the Messianic Prophecies. Also written in the Messianic Prophecies is what Allah will do once the satanic leaders proceed with their crucifixion of his Messiah. Again, we covered this in a previous message last year when we described the fulfillment of the prophet Salih in the she-camel that's mentioned in the Holy Quran. Prophet Salih's work mirrors that of John the Baptist in the Bible. It gives one aspect of how he's a herald or the forerunner of the Christ. So the prophet Salih, unlike other messengers who were sent to warn wicked leaders who were sent to the people, he was sent to warn the wicked leaders against slaughtering Allah's she-camel, which is a metaphor or an analogy referring to Allah's Messiah. This Quranic narrative of Salih and the she-camel is in part the fulfillment of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's vision-like experience on the Great Mother Plain, Mother Wheel. And it states in this specific narrative, we, meaning Allah, sent the she-camel to the Thamud to open their eyes. I put in parentheses to teach them the truth of God's presence and will. But they treated her wrongfully. We only send the signs by way of terror and warning from evil. Behold, we told thee, meaning the Messiah, that thy Lord doth encompass mankind round about, meaning Allah sees all. We granted the vision which we showed thee, but as a trial for men, as also the cursed tree mentioned in the Holy Quran. We put terror and warning into them, but it only increases their inordinate transgression. Now, this may mean that the revelation and the affirmation or the confirming and affirming of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's vision-like experience on the Great Mother Wheel with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad should terrify the synagogue of Satan. But it doesn't. It only increases their inordinate transgression. Now they just want to kill everybody since they can't rule the people no more in evil. So the signs of Allah regarding the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's mission and future function as the Christ includes the presence of the Great Mother Plain, along with his September 17th, 1985 experience on the Mother Plain with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and also his domestic life. Now, it further states in the Holy Quran about the prophet Salih in another narrative given in another surah or chapter. It states, Thamud rejected the truth in their inordinacy when the basis of them broke forth with mischief. So Allah's messenger said to them, leave alone Allah's she-camel, give her to drink. But they called him a liar and slaughtered her. So their Lord destroyed them for their sin and leveled them with the ground. So some of you are calling me a liar in my representation of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's identity as the Christ in his domestic life. Mischief is about to break forth in this quest of the satanic leaders to ignite the global war of desolation. And I'm telling you that you should not crucify the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Stop him from following the directive to make that press conference. But you're calling me a liar. Well, destruction will ensue, according to what Allah promises. Now, through the guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I have presented key aspects of the value for the domestic life and its alignment with the Messianic prophecies. Now, there's several key areas that I have not yet addressed because it is not time to represent those areas or aspects to you. So you would be wise to continue to listen to me. if you aim to get through the dark hour, which is based upon those who want to arrest and crucify the Messiah, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. I'm just telling you straight up. You can think whatever you want to think about me, but I know something you don't know, and I've already proven that. Now, for those who are familiar with the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad during his message at Temple Number 2, it was called at that time. Today it's called Mosque Marianne. His words on July 30th, 1972, when he put the Honorable Louis Farrakhan in his seat and told us to look at, listen to, and obey the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. That's in a nutshell. Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad opened with these words. I want you to remember today. When we look back on that, to what unfolded after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad left for the Great Mother Wheel, then we have to kind of think about whether or not we remembered. And of course, that's easy to answer, we didn't. During the Honorable Elijah Muhammad Savior's Day 1973 and 1974 addresses, he constantly used the phrase, we must remember, and the other phrase, I want you to remember. Check out those messages or lectures for yourself. Now, why did he reiterate this over and over again? Remember, remember, remember. Because we tend to forget. The longer something is away from us, we often fail to remember it. So we have to remember the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's own words regarding his work and his movements among the people these last 40 plus years. We got to remember that. We got to remember what he said about his own life, his own integrity, and his own morality. We have to remember that. Regardless to what others say to the contrary. We must also remember the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's divine messianic work is the firmest witness of his sublime and esteemed morality and integrity. That's why he's called honorable. Now, why is it vitally important for us to remember these things? Well, among the reasons. Just recently, my neighbor told me about the use of video graphics technology that enables other people's faces to be seamlessly placed on someone else's body to deceive the viewers about what they're watching. They think it's a certain person, but it's not that person. So I wonder why he said the other day, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, that when you come to his hotel suite, there's a second teaching going on. I never asked anybody to come and take me sightseeing. He said a lot of other things too that I don't have time to go into, but all of it is his witness of himself. So you may see a video that you believe is showing the Honorable Louis Farrakhan doing something unscrupulous, but that is not him in that video. So if you don't remember his words about what he did, if he's not in a position to defend himself, then you go along with a video that you believe is him, but it doesn't align to none of his work, not one iota of his mission, and not even to his own words. Now, I don't know about you, but that's all I got to say. That ain't him. Some of you, if you want to go on and explain it and give life to some deception, then you can go ahead and do that. But me, that's BS. Because I have his words. The synagogue of Satan is in a desperate situation to take as many people down with them into Allah's hellfire. So they're using every deceptive trick employed in the book. Thank you for listening and taking the time to listen to this very important message. May Allah continue to bless you and your family. Assalamu alaikum.